If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, broadcasting live every Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. Central from Panama City Beach, Florida, home of the world's most beautiful beaches. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining me on my weekly broadcast. Every week, I'll feature some of the best instructors, coaches, authors, and entrepreneurs in the golf business today. I begin with a great discussion on Coach's Corner, followed by an insightful interview with my special guest. So let's get started by introducing tonight's Coach's Corner panel. All right, thank you everybody for joining us live here on Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and we've got a great show for you tonight. We're going to be starting off here in just a moment or two with another great round of Coach's Corner with the panel, and I will introduce them in just a moment. And then a little bit later on in the show, I'm going to be joined by a very special guest, Robbie Raugh, who is not only a registered nurse, but she's also an integrative nutritionist and motivational health and fitness speaker, as well as a radio host of the Raw Truth on ESPN and WDCX radio. And she's also a Catalyst fitness instructor, and she's also an author, too. We're going to talk about her book here in just a little bit when she joins us. And actually, she was on the Women of Golf show with my good friend and co-host, LPGA professional Cindy Miller, a few weeks ago. We only had a little limited time, so we didn't get a chance to get into her book, which we're going to talk about more tonight. So I decided to bring her on Golf Talk Live as a featured guest, and we'll get into that and more when she comes on. But let me remind everybody, of course, as I said, we are live here on the blogtalkradio.com network, and at the end of the show, during the outro, you'll have some other great ways that you can tune into the show as well if you haven't already figured it out. And I also want to thank the sponsor of the Coach's Corner panel, golfswing.com, who has been very generous in coming back and sponsoring the segment again this season. I'm very excited to have them on. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about them right here, and then I'll bring out our panel. Golfswing.com, with their cutting-edge technology, have teamed up alongside some of the best golf instructors, coaches, and swing gurus in the business. Together, they have created the best video teaching and training online platform in golf. So if you're ready to break 100, 90, 80, or even 70, then join their online video academy and learn from some of the best. Join golfswing.com today and watch, practice, and improve your game. And don't forget to enter the promo code GolfTalkLive at checkout to receive 50% off the subscription price. It's well worth it. They've got some great instruction on there and some great videos. So definitely check them out after the show. That's golfswing.com. All right, as I mentioned, I've got a great panel on tonight, and one of them is here right now, and hopefully the other one will be joining us here in a second. So I'm going to introduce her first. Sue Weger, of course, is a #1 best-selling author. She actually has a great book as well called Golf, The Last 6 Inches, Change Your Brain, Change Your Game. We've talked about that here on the show. She's also a motivational speaker and peak performance coach, and she is a 24-plus year LPGA Class A golf professional and the owner of Weger Consulting, LLC. Also, hopefully joining us here on the panel is going to be John Hughes. He's a PGA Master professional and the president of North Florida PGA Section, as well as the recipient for the 2013 PGA of America Horton Smith Award, as well as a top 30 instructor with Golf Tips magazine. So those are going to be the panelists tonight. But Sue's here already. John's a little bit late to the party, but we'll bring him on when he joins us here. So Sue, welcome to Coach's Corner.
Hey, Ted. Awesome. It's a beautiful day here in Arizona. So how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It was, as we were talking about off air, it's a little hot and steamy here in Florida, so I'm a little bit jealous. But we were talking about, and I won't get into it too long, but we were just talking about my trip to California just a few weeks ago and how much cooler it was, and really enjoyed just getting that reprieve, if you will, from some of the hot, muggy weather that we're getting here in Florida. But it's typical, and as they say, par for the course for the summer here in Florida. So I can't complain. I chose to live here, and that's what you get. But I know that you're looking for forward to a little bit cooler weather in your neck of the woods as well, correct?
Yes, correct. We had just this last week we broke a record at 115, which is crazy.
Ouch.
But the nice thing here about in August is we have the monsoons that come in the afternoon, so humidity goes up, but it's nothing like humidity in Florida. It's about 35 to 45% humidity. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot different versus your probably 80 to 90% humidity temperatures. So.
And then some. It's.
Yeah, I can only.
It's broken the ceiling a few times. Let me tell you, it's not quite gotten to triple digits, but yeah, it's pretty bad. All right, I see John is also here. John, good evening and welcome onto the Coach's Corner panel.
Good evening, Ted. Apologize for being tardy. It's just one of those things, taking care of the clients.
That's right. All right. As I mentioned, on the panel tonight is John Hughes and Sue Weger. Both of them are here now, so we're going to get into tonight's discussion. So I put together an amateur's checklist, if you will, of things that they can do and or should do in order to play their best golf. So, John, since you're a little late to the party, I'm going to give Sue the honors to start things off and with the first question here. And it's sort of par for the course, if you will, because a little bit later on in the show, as I mentioned, Robbie Raugh is going to be joining us, and she's a nutritionalist expert. So I know she's going to be able to add some great things to this particular question. But Sue, I want to ask you about really nutrition and eating, I guess, right to get the most out of your round. And also some things to avoid that's going to zap your energy. You know, one of the things that people don't realize is when they're out there playing 18 holes, that you need a lot of energy to be able to complete that round, effectively. And unfortunately, people don't prepare. So just based on your own experience and maybe tips that you've given your students, if you will, when they're out there, playing on the golf course, maybe some things that they should do to help maintain those energy levels, and maybe some things to avoid both prior to playing and while they're on the course.
Yeah, I think the first thing in regards to prepare is hydration. I'm sure that is, pushed, but I don't think a lot of people understand how important it really is, because our body is completely made of, 90% water. And once our body starts to dehydrate, we lose focus, we lose energy, and it's very hard to sustain mental acuity when we're out there on the golf course. And a lot of people think, well, I don't want to be thinking on the golf course, but you do, in the sense of, understanding pre-shot routine and just being aware and be able to focus. So I think hydration is the big thing. And I think a lot of the times, a lot of people think water is enough. And in some people that is the case, but water sometimes is not enough. And I highly recommend is that people start off with maybe even mixing up half water, half electrolytes. And a lot of people like to do the Gatorade, but I also warn that a lot of people don't do really well with the type of Gatorades or the Powerades that have a lot of sugar. So I always suggest is that they mix it with 50% electrolyte and 50% water and start that way to prepare for their long rounds, especially during the summer when the humidity is up, like yours in Florida, and the heat is up here in Arizona. So the other thing is regards to energy, our fuel, our body is, or our food is what we need to fuel our body. So I think in regards to, especially with juniors, this is something that a lot of people don't really talk about, or parents aren't aware of it. But you have to be very careful of, like I said, the high sugar content. And a lot of people say, protein bars or candy bars, and candy bars are not a good thing because of the high sugar content. So protein bars is what I highly recommend. And I think as coaches, we need to just educate our players is that, food and water is important, because our energy, you're out there for a minimum of 5 hours. People think it's 4 hours, but really it's a minimum of anywhere from 4 to 6 hours by the time you arrive at the golf course and by the time you leave. So it's 6 hours, and that's a long time not to have anything, either hydration or any type of food or fuel within the body. So that's something that I always talk about with the parents and the juniors and players that are planning to play in tournaments. Because as you know, in regards to higher level amateurs, they play more than one-day events. A lot of times they play in 2-day events. and and they travel to those events. So it does take a lot of energy and focus in order to be at your, as we call, peak performance levels, both in the emotional side and the physical side. And as you said, in regards to hydration and food are really, really important to be able to stay at that peak level.
Well said. And the other thing too, Sue, that a lot of people don't realize, and even I didn't realize this for a long time until I, some years ago, spoke with a nutritionist and really got some great tips. But, people don't realize that, we're sleeping, for those of us that get some sleep, maybe anywhere from 6 to 8 hours a night. I try. But, so for all that time, you're not taking any, intake. They're not drinking any water. So you're actually, in a way, you're kind of waking up a little bit dehydrated because you've actually had no water intake, unless you've gotten up in the middle of the night and snuck a glass full. But for the most part, most people don't. So you're getting up. So that early morning routine, if you will, of getting some good nutrition into you, but also rehydrating with some water and as you said, maybe some electrolytes is equally important, correct?
Absolutely. I think I make it a daily habit. The first thing I do in the morning is have 2 large glasses of water before breakfast because it just starts the day off. And I've been doing that the last 6 months, and it's made a huge difference on just how my body feels and how awake I can get in regards to prepare for my day. And that's not even, teaching anywhere from 8 to 9 hours a day, so it's just the same as out there being on the golf course as players are. So I highly recommend it. It's an easy routine. 2 big glasses of water before breakfast. As you're walking around getting ready for your day, you can be sipping it. It's not that you have to oh my gosh, I have to have 32 ounces of water right away. But you can
right.
The first 2 hours of waking up, you can have. I carry around a very large, canister of water with me.
Right.
And the first 2 hours, that's all I do is drink water, and it really makes a difference on how you feel throughout the day.
Yeah, and a lot of people too mistake that. That's a great point. A lot of people also make the mistake, John, of thinking, well, I'll get up and I'll have my morning coffee, and there's nothing wrong with having some coffee. But they think, well, that's a liquid, so I'm putting something liquid in my body. But John, I want to ask you, obviously we don't need to go over all the specifics because Sue did a great job of covering them. But I want to talk about when we get to the golf course, because this is something that we often see with some of our players out there. They're getting out there, they're grabbing a bunch of snacks to take around with them, or when the cart comes rolling around after a few holes, they're stocking up on a lot of these sugary drinks and sugary items, or worse. What are some things that and I'm not trying to steal anybody's fun for those of you listening to the show out there, but, if you want to play your best golf, there's some things that you need to do. So, John, just talk a little bit about some energy zapping things that are going to find their way into your golf cart or pull cart, during a round.
I think the first thing is I have to overcome the myth that 2 giant cups of coffee is good for me in the morning. Maybe that's not it. As far as zappers go, it all depends on the golf course that you're playing. The various courses here in Orlando that operate very much like a resort. Your beverage cart is a resort. It's the alcohol. It's the mixers with the alcohol. It's a lot of snacks and candies. The more traditional municipal public access, it's the halfway house or the restaurant with the rotary hot dog is what I call it. The one that's on the rotisserie, boom, bang, it's in the bun.
Right.
Put something on it and you're out of there. What those things do is spike. Everything that you're going to get out of that is a spike. And at some point, unless that cart or unless that halfway house shows up again at the end of the spike to refuel the same way, just like there's a high, there's going to be an equal low. And that's typically
right.
when your game's going to go down. So you're looking at things that will maintain energy level while still fueling. Nuts, simple sugars, not complex not complex sugars. Complex carbohydrates versus simple carbohydrates. They just last in your system longer. Your body uses these things a little longer, combined with the correct hydration. Typically, you can go every 3 to 5 holes, not have any issues, do a little bit of refueling. One of my better amateurs, he was here for a couple weekends ago for a weekend, and he was talking about how he tries to refuel every 2.5 to 3 holes on a granola mix that his wife makes him, or something else similar, and it's whether he needs it or not, and that's the real key. By the time you're zapped, and you're zapped beyond what you believe to be zapped. It's the same thing. If you're thirsty, you're beyond thirsty. You got to keep drinking. So when it comes to fueling from a food standpoint of view, Jason, my amateur, does it correctly. 2.5 to 3 holes, he's forcing his hand into his bag to grab some nuts or grab some granola or grab an energy bar or whatever the case may be. And the other thing I'd tell you, if you're super competitive, whether it's a nutritionist, your general practitioner who can refer you to a nutritionist, everybody's different. So your ZAP level, Ted's going to be different from Sue's, which is going to be different than mine. And it's all based on metabolism, and there are certain things that are going to work for you that won't work for me. But at the same time, I may zap it quicker than Sue. So until you know that combination, and a lot of times it's trial and error, but you can find some professionals out there, medical professionals, that you can get some blood workup done, some other things done, and they can come up with something that's going to come really, really close. It's a matter of you tweaking it while you're on the course to make sure you're there. At the end of the day, when Sue and I, when you have a really good student, they play well, they play consistent, and all of a sudden they're saying, ooh, why am I so inconsistent? And we've checked all the other boxes. It boils down to those foods that are zapping them or the lack thereof.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great way to formulate that as well, John. You know, guys, the other thing too, I think that, and especially, you know, Sue, you pointed out for juniors is even more critical because their bodies are revved up engines anyways. Obviously, as we get a little bit older, our metabolism changes a little bit, and we don't necessarily need to have quite as much energy intake, you know, as the young guys do and the young ladies, because their bodies are constantly, you know, like a performance car, if you will. In a lot of cases, they're just rev. So they need that fuel intake, and that raises a really interesting point. As well on the fitness side of things. And I'm not talking about working out or that sort of thing. I'm talking about, and Sue, I'm going to come back to you with this, is the sort of the pre-round warm-up. And I don't mean, we're not going to talk about the golf shots yet, but let's talk about when we arrive at the golf course, how much time should we dedicate to sort of a pre-round warm-up? Because this is something that a lot of people miss the boat on as well.
Yeah, I tell my players that a minimum is 30 to 45 minutes. And because of what usually happens is people run to the driving range and think their golf swing is going to warm up their body. And it needs to be the other way around. They need to warm their body up to warm up their golf swing. And, you know, television in regards to on the tour, like PGA and LPGA, it kind of does us a disservice because what we see is players. What do we see? We see them doing the same thing. They go to the tee, but we don't see them 2 hours before or an hour before. And I think that, you know, as like a lot of tour professionals, they don't like to give away their secrets in regards to what they're doing with their bodies or, you know, training. But like I said, to go back to my point, is 30 to 45 minutes is a minimum to warm the body up. And, you know, I teach my players a 10 to 15 minute warm up because a lot of people don't want to spend an hour to warm up. A lot of people don't have that time. A lot of people are usually running from work to make their tee time. So if you can make it simple but yet effective, and it's a whole body exercise, rather than just saying, okay, well, let's go hit some balls. That formula doesn't work for very long. And if you're, as you know, if your body's warmed up, you're going to feel better. Your golf swing is going to be in much better sequence. And actually, the player feels better about themselves too. So, I have a fun little Facebook Live that I did. It's just a 5 to 8 minute full body warm up, just to get people's blood pumping a little bit throughout the whole body. So, I think it's imperative that they warm the body and mind up before they get out there on that first tee.
Yeah, and that's a great point as well. Thank you for that, Sue. I was watching something recently on the Golf Channel, and they were talking about Tiger Woods as an example. And he gets up at some ungodly hour in the morning and prepares for a round. I mean, it's literally I forget now what it was. It's like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I'm still deep in sleep at that point. And John, he's up there and he's doing his a couple of hour workout, and then he's getting some good nutrition to eat, and so on and so forth. And he hasn't even gotten to the golf course yet. And then he's then going there and probably going to spend a good hour or so on the range warming up and that. And obviously, our amateurs don't have that luxury of doing that. But once they've done as Sue suggested, they've kind of gotten their body in a good place and they're ready. Let's move to the actual range. And I want you to sort of prioritize the range time, if you will, before you're about to play your rent. Let's break that down a little bit. And then I've got a specific question in that same topic that I want to ask both of you.
So what you're talking about, Ted, is routine. And we talk a lot about pre-shot routine. What you're talking about with Tiger is a routine. And what is that daily routine, and how does golf fit into it? I think if you're looking to play better golf, and I'm going to draw a line here, there are certain people that are listening that they're a hobbyist and they want to play better and they're searching for that magic dust. It is called routine. Think about the routine that you do every day, getting up, the amount of sleep you get, what you do as soon as you hop out of bed to the moment you hop back into bed. There are certain trends and patterns that you do. So what you describe with Tiger in particular is the routine as to how he fits golf in. And if he's got that early round, that first off kind of thing on Thursday or Friday, then he's adjusting his routine, which means it adjusts ahead of time, not delayed. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you a great example. My routine during the season, because I'm getting up much earlier, is I'll go to bed earlier. It starts the day before. When it comes to the range, the real thing I would give that hobbyist is make sure that there is a very smooth and uninhibited transition from your warm-up routine to the golf course. And it's different for everybody. Again, with my amateur a couple weeks ago, we were talking about that 20 years ago. He could hang out and talk and relax and enjoy the company of the other players. He can't do that anymore. He found himself bored recently at a tournament, and so much bored that he lost his focus the first couple of holes. So he's literally had to adjust his competitive routine that way, where he's coming right off the range onto the golf course, and there's very little room for error. A really good example, if you've ever seen Matt Kuchar is historically known to show up for his tee time with 30 seconds left on the clock, because he's that kind of person. He's a little bit ADD. He gets a little distracted. He plans it all out so he has the fewest distractions possible from the range to the first tee. He gets to the tee, and he's ready to go. There's other people like Lee Trevino. They are a constant distraction, and their routine includes distraction. So you have to understand your makeup to be able to plan how you use your time on the range effectively. We've talked in the past about, 10 minutes for this and 15 minutes for that. You can come up with that. Everybody's a little bit different. But I think the different thing that I'm going to talk about with this evening, the different way I'm going to answer this question, is literally think of routine as a holistic thing throughout the day. And how does golf fit in, and how do the different components of golf fit in? As Sue said, hey, get there at least 30, 40 minutes ahead of time. Some people require an hour. Some people require 20 minutes. Everybody's a little bit different, but make sure you're utilizing the time so when you're on that first tee, it's a smooth transition from warm-up to play.
Yeah, great analogy, John. The other thing too is, and you're exactly right. We've talked about this in the past about, sort of assigning a time frame of how much time should be spent on the short game and other areas of the game as well. And that's okay as a baseline to work with, and then make adjustments, again, based on the individual player. But you're exactly right. One size doesn't fit all. And for some people, they might need to get to the golf course a little bit early. They might need more time in order to prepare, and others, may not need or require quite as much. So you're exactly right. We can't sort of throw everybody in the same box. But I want to ask this question, and it again goes to really time management, if you will, and practice, because this is an area or two areas really that a lot of people fall into one category or the other. And Sue, I'm going to start with you, and then John, I want you to jump in as well. How much is too much and not enough to see noticeable results? And what I mean by that is you get some people that will go to the range and they will, beat balls for 2 hours, and yet they're not really getting any noticeable results. And then you have the flip side of the person that goes there and, as John said, gets in there a few minutes before they're about to play and hits a few balls, and they're not getting it. So is there such a thing? Is there too much practice, and is there not enough practice to see the results? And how do you decide what's right for you?
Well, I think you have to practice with a purpose. And, we teach players because, as we all know, that again, what's the purpose of hitting golf balls for 2 hours? If I had a student that came to me and said, well, I'm hitting golf balls for 2 hours a day, and I said, well, what's your purpose? And they really don't have an answer. They're just like, well, I'm just trying to hit it straight, for example. I think that, you really have to assess the player and find out what their purpose is, because like John said, not everybody fits in the same mold in regards to what works best for them. I think that, too, is, practice is not perfect, just like the golf game is not perfect. But I think in regards to practice, I really think that you have to explain to students and clients is that let's have a purposeful practice. What are you trying to do? Is practice trying to work on certain mechanics? Are we working on a driver? Or are we working on iron swing? Let's again go back to our purpose and focus. If it's a pre-warm-up to go play, I teach my players is like, okay, then our transition from mechanics to play should still be on the range, which means we're going to go ahead and warm the body up, and then we'll go ahead and warm the swing up, but then we're going to train our body to work on our pre-shot routines, just like as if we can transition that into the first tee, so that they're not just walking over there cold, and I don't mean cold by warm-up, but I mean by cold mentally, getting ready to play. Mm-hmm. So even if it's the last part of their practice, if, for example, if they're going to go play their round of golf, the last part of their practice on the range is all about the routine. If it's the routine of whether or not they're going to hit a wedge 10 yards, or if they're going to hit a wedge 20 yards, or if they're going to hit a first tee shot up with their tee ball or with their driver. We work on pre-shot routine. So that I like to tell my players, what's the first shot you're going to take when you get to that first tee? Is it a par 3 or is it a driver? That's what you should be walking over to, meaning the last shot that you should just been performed or feel comfortable with was going to be your next first shot on the first tee. So that you're prepared and you're like, oh, yeah, I've got this. And you're mentally in a different state than, okay, maybe I've just been hitting putts for the last 15 minutes, and now I have to run over to the first tee and hit a driver. Your body's not prepared for that, and emotionally you're not prepared for that. So just training teaching the players how to practice and what that's all about, and again, always have a purpose to it. And like John says, there's a transition from practice to play. But I like to teach my players on the range, I want you to play on the range too, meaning work on your pre-shot routines, work on your post-shot routines. so that you can mentally prepare for that first tee in a round of golf.
Yeah, well said, Sue. It's interesting. Cindy Miller and I, of course, LPGA professional Cindy Miller and I co-host the Women of Golf show Tuesday mornings. And, over the last several years, we've had the pleasure of speaking with a lot of the young guns, if you will, on the Symetra Tour, of course, making their way to the LPGA. And, John, what's interesting, what Sue just talked about is exactly what a lot of them do. Quite often we'll throw the question there, what advice would you give to some of the amateurs listening to the program? And they will, almost verbatim mention what Sue just did, and that is really focusing on the shots that they're going to use out in the golf course. And, one of the things, again, going back to the question that I want to ask you is, I want to phrase it a little bit differently. We often see a lot of our amateur players, particularly in our high handicappers, that spend an exorbitant amount of time on the range, as Sue put, without really a purpose. And when you're dealing with some of your students, what do you try to get them to think about before they get into a practice session? What are some of the discussion that you're having with them? And then conversely, if you see a player that's really not necessarily that they're not putting effort into it, but they're not really focusing on the right areas, again, what's the discussion you're going to have with them?
To expand off the word purposeful, there's got to be some discipline to that purpose. And that's typically what I'm asking my players to do. What is the purpose of today, and what's going to be the discipline that you're going to use to go about achieving that purpose? On the way home, I was on a phone call with a longtime client who's about to go to college, hasn't played in a collegiate event in a little while. He's taking some time off, and he was talking to me about how off his game was today. And I asked him, well, how disciplined has your practice been? He admitted to me that it wasn't necessarily a lot of practice. He felt it was purposeful, but I asked him again, what about the dedication and the discipline to a certain thing within the practice that is going to have you regain what you feel you've lost? And by the way, if you're disciplined, you should be able to know what you lost. You shouldn't be calling up asking me what you lost. We're about 1,000 miles away right now, so without seeing him live hitting a shot, it's hard for me to say what he is or isn't doing. When there's discipline in what you do, you will know immediately when something is missing. It's the same routine and discipline that you go about everyday life. Where did I put my keys? What did I do with these certain things? And what do I do at this time of day? There's a discipline to that, and discipline is not a bad word. Your mom or dad spanking you for doing something wrong. What it's about is doing the same thing in the same manner because it works. And that's the first thing I try to have my players understand. If it works, why are you not staying disciplined to what works? And once they buy into that, it becomes a much, much easier process. It becomes a much easier process to say, okay, statistically, here's where we need to work today, and here's what we're going to work on, and here's how we're going to do it. And there's not necessarily buy-in. I don't like that term. What it's more about is they understand it and they take ownership because the facts are there. And discipline allows for facts to be more easily seen versus doubted. When you've got a little bit of discipline to you, it's a lot easier to expand on one other thing that Sue said. Practice makes permanent, and that's what people forget. So if you practiced undisciplined, how are you going to go play golf undisciplined?
Right. Well said. It's interesting, guys, because a lot of times when we talk to, whether it be students that we're working with or just players in general, sometimes when I've, gone to a course, didn't necessarily have a tee time set up, or I'm not playing with a specific group, and I'll just sometimes join in with another group. And, a lot of times I'll just, sort of play dumb. I don't tell them who I am or what I do and that, and we'll just sort of have a fun game. And, I'll watch how they handle themselves on the golf course. How they, do they have a consistent pre-shot routine, are relatively consistent. And obviously we don't expect the amateurs to be exactly like the pros. But if that's something that you could ever copy from watching the pros, that would be a good thing to do, is to see how they organize themselves, before each and every shot. And when they get a little bit, disjointed, or something distracts them enough that they get out of that routine, they very quickly, or at least the best players do, will reorganize their thoughts and get into that routine once again and make sure that they're, ready to execute the shot. So they don't just, say, well, I missed my moment and I'm going to hit the ball. They actually reorganize and handle it again. Sue, another area too that I want to talk about is really handling. It's twofold. Handling disappointment is first and foremost. We're all going to be disappointed sometimes in a round that we've played. We're not going to, we didn't play our best. And obviously, I feel it's a good idea as an amateur golfer that you sort of unpack the round, if you will, in order to find some of those key areas that are going to help you the next time, that are going to benefit you the next time you play. So let's talk a little bit about that. When you're working with the player and, you've asked them, maybe they played last weekend, and you talk about that round and it just didn't go the way that they had hoped it goes, what are some things, and let's have a bit of a dialogue, if you will, as to what you're going to say to them and how they can use that round to help in the next round.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I ask them, I always like to ask them, I give all my players, the competitive players, a journal, and they're required to fill it out immediately after the round, because most amateurs, I should say hobbyists versus amateur players, what do they usually do? The first thing they do is they go to the 19th hole and they usually focus on what they did not do well.
Right.
And I teach my players to do a little bit of reverse psychology. I like to teach them, okay, in that journal, the first thing you're going to write down is what did you do well, and revamp and go back and review the round, the things that you did well, because I want them to anchor that versus the negative part of the golf round, if you may. So I think that's the difference in regards to teaching players how to respond and how to react to different things.
Yeah. Did you go get a bat?
Yeah.
And in regards to, they fill out the journal. And that's the first thing that they're looking at. They're looking at, okay, what did I do well? Maybe it was I putted well, or I hit the ball like the fairway, or I did a lot of regulations, whatever. So I teach my players reverse psychology in regards to that. I like them thinking about the positives so they can anchor that. Now, I'm not saying that, let's say they didn't putt very well that day, that maybe I need to focus on that. Well, let's look at that a little bit differently. Like, okay, so did you maybe didn't have a feeling of reading of the greens, or, maybe your speed was off, something like that. But in regards to looking at the negativity, it's how they respond to it. And I think you really, as a coach, you really have to help them respond to it positively, but then may help them make a plan for that. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And I agree wholeheartedly, with you, Sue. I think that this is something that a lot of amateur golfers out there really need to think about, because you're exactly right. More often than not, what they do is after their round, they're thinking about the greens that they three putted, or they're thinking about when they hit it into the woods or into the, skipped it into the pond or what have you. They're not focusing on the good components of their round and then building off of that. So already it goes to, I know what you talk about in your book, and that is what we say to ourselves. If you've constantly got negative thoughts and negative speak, then that's what's going to come to fruition, later on down the road. So, the better players, if you watch them, certainly their rounds are much different than yours and mine and most of the amateurs out there. But even they unpack things a little bit differently, John. They're looking and focusing on really what went well in their round. They're certainly going to deal with whatever didn't go well in a practice session, maybe after the round, but they're focusing on the positives. In fact, when you listen to them doing, post-round interviews, you very, very rarely hear them going, well, geez, I missed 18, fairways, or I didn't do this right, or I didn't do that right. They're very seldomly ever talking negatively about the round. They're talking about really that they hit the ball well, and they need to fine-tune their putting or what have you. So it goes very well with what Sue did. So just talk a little bit about that as well, John, on your side, on again, some of the conversations that you might have with some of your students.
I definitely point out those interviews that you just spoke about and how the really good players deflect the questions from the reporter who just definitely has to draw something negative out of the player. I can count on my hand, on both hands, how many times that's happened. But when it does happen, that player typically goes into the next round with those thoughts somehow. They gave in, they cracked. They didn't stay strong to themselves. It's called mental toughness. So when it comes to evaluating, I actually call it inventorying the round. Definitely some strengths. I asked them about specific shots that stand out. What were some of the things that you're most proud of? Going back to a phrase that I use with my son, making himself proud every day, just doing something a little different that will allow him to feel proud about who he is and what he's about. I also just say, hey, how does that transition into the next round? How does that all set you up for the success you'll have tomorrow? And what are some of the things you're thinking about? It's my job as coach to deflect the negative. At that point, as soon as I get negative, I'm literally going back to what they gave me as positives and having them redirect their thoughts that way. It takes a while. Golf is a very negative game when you look at what the consequences are the majority of the time. So sometimes you got to peel the onion back multiple layers to find that little golden nugget that you can harvest, set in the ground, and maybe it grows. Gold does grow, but you've got to nurture it correctly. And it's all about just reinforcing the smaller things, maybe something they forgot about. And what's cool about that, from a coaching standpoint of view, when those eyebrows go up and they remember that small little thing that happens, that could be the catapult into the positive for the next round. It could be the thing that totally wipes out the second place finishes, as Nicholas so fondly forgets. It's just simple things like that can make a big difference. The simpler, the better.
Yeah, I agree. Something else I want to touch on a little bit, and I know there's always a variable, if you will, in anything. But Sue, let's talk about equipment a little bit. This is something that a lot of amateurs again struggle with, and again, we want to keep in mind that there's budgetary issues and things that could be involved. But I don't know how many times I've shown up to the course, and I've seen even some of my close friends who I've cautioned I don't know how many times over the years about doing things like regripping, having their clubs regripped on at least annually. I mean, obviously it depends on the number of rounds they're going to play, and also some people that play with clubs that maybe been around for a few generations. It might be a time for an update. I mean, just because you're playing with a Varden grip doesn't mean you have to play with his clubs. So let's talk about that. That's an area that I think a lot of amateurs miss the boat on as well. Is things like regripping and maybe updating their equipment periodically.
Yeah, I think that again, it depends on the player and how often they're going to play. However, I really believe in educating players about the mindset that they deserve to have good equipment. And it doesn't have to be the $1,000 driver, but it needs to be beneficial to them.
because as we all talk about, the game isn't always what do I want to say? The game is hard at times, and
right.
having equipment that doesn't fit them, and that's just like we talked about, a lot of times the U.S. kids a lot of the juniors have clubs are too heavy or too long. Their golf swing their body isn't going to be able to sequence the motion that we're even trying to train them to do. So I just say, I talk especially with the women in my groups. That's the first thing we talk about in groups is that you deserve to have good equipment, and it doesn't have to be the most expensive, but it does need to benefit you. It wouldn't be any different than if you were, and I like to use analogies like if you were a skier and you were going down a black diamond and you are trying to ski with 1950s ski equipment, you're not going to do very well, and you're not going to have any fun. And the goal is just to have fun. For most players, is I want to have a good time when I'm out there. So again, it's just educating them as why should we have good equipment, in that sense. And I think people get all wrapped up in saying, well, I have to have 14 clubs, and most people don't have to have 14 clubs. You could have 4 or 5, I think 4 to 6 clubs that fit you, that won't cost you, the high ends of 14 clubs. And I think it's really important that you need to teach and educate the players that, it is important to have good equipment in the sense that it benefits you and it makes the game a little bit easier. And it's a variable that you can completely eliminate, meaning if your equipment fits you and something's not going right in your game, then we can eliminate, well, okay, it's not the equipment. We know it's the Indian, not the arrow.
Right. Well said. And John, just to add on that a little bit, there's other things that we're going to look at as well. I mean, we want to look at the grooves on your irons. I mean, that's something too that, over time they wear out and lose their edge, if you will. And sometimes it's time to make a change. And, obviously if you're playing once in a blue moon, that's something that maybe you're not going to consider doing. But if you want to play, or you are playing with some sort of regularity, those are things that need to be addressed as well. And maybe you can just touch on that a little bit, because people don't realize that when especially your wedges, you're using them quite a bit in a round, and they start to show some age, that's going to hamper your ability on the golf course.
You're right. I recently wrote a post, or there will be a post on my website in conjunction with Flight Scope about a wet ball and wet grooves and how much that affects spin.
Yep.
In particular with your scoring irons, those grooves become even more important. And the more worn out they are, the less control you have over the shots. The best example I can give you is Bryson DeChambeau. Apparently, this is a story that was told to me by the Flight Scope people, was he was very concerned about a particular wedge. He had it in his bag about 6 weeks only, but he had hit a lot of balls with it, not because of an extraordinary extra amount of practice so much as it was the courses he was playing and how often he was hitting that particular wedge. And they get a micrometer out, and sure enough, there was an indentation in there that no one could see. And he was hitting the ball that accurately that concaveness to the face was affecting his spin rate. Well, they knew that based off the radar data, so they couldn't figure it out because the grooves looked perfect. They weren't.
Right.
That's the most extreme. From an amateur standpoint of view, you've got to look at your wedges at least once a year, simply because wedge technology is probably advancing more so than anything else right now as far as how grooves are being made, how they're being manufactured within legal limits. What are they doing with grinds of the sole? What are they doing with bounce angles and how those grinds interact? And then what are they doing with wedge shaft technology? That's still an ongoing process. You're going to be very surprised how a wedge for me may not fit a student. In my bag, I've got 3 or 4 56-degree sand wedges for people to try, or even better, a gap wedge during the height of golf school vacation season. That's what wedge people most often forget about putting in their bag. But there's several different grinds. There's several different configurations because not one's going to fit everybody. The loft may be as far as gapping goes, but you're going to be very surprised how grooves, grinds, everything else affects what the ball does, the trajectories, the spin levels. So, yeah, that's something you got to look at. The more often you're practicing with wedges, the more often you've got to consider replacing wedges. Don't regroove them. Regrooving them is only a temporary thing, and you're taking metal off of the club. It changes the playability of the club from a weight standpoint of view.
Yeah, and you know, as I said, for some of our golfers that don't play very often, it may not be as big of an issue. But for somebody that, you know, is playing with any sort of regularity, whether it's weekly or maybe multiple times a week, you know, you've got to check your equipment, and that's not to say that, you know, all of the other things we talked about earlier don't apply. You know, you can't blame your equipment; it's not everything, but it is an integral part of your golf game. So you've got to check everything. You've got to check what's going on between your ears and make sure that you're in the right zone, that area. You want to make sure your golf fitness is solid as well, and you want to make sure you're feeding and fueling your body correctly as well. You know, pre-round, post-round, and every other time as well. But great discussion tonight, guys. I appreciate it very much. Very interesting, and I love a lot of the perspectives that you guys brought to the panel discussion tonight. And as always, I'm going to give you just a moment or two to let the folks know if they want to reach out and how they can go about doing that. Sue, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. I appreciate it. You can reach me at SueWegerGolfAcademy.com, or I should say SueWegerGolf.com. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. You can find my #1 international best-selling book on Amazon. It's called Golf: The Last 6 Inches: How to Change Your Brain, Change Your Game. And that there is an ACE Performance companion journal with that as well. So I do private coaching on the mental side with that as well. But thanks again, Ted and John. It was great to hear from you again, and look forward to our next show.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Sue. And definitely for those of you that don't have a copy of Sue's book, go to Amazon.com. And again, it's Golf: The Last 6 Inches, Change Your Brain, Change Your Game. It's well worth it. I've read it twice now. It's a great book, Sue. John, go ahead. Let the folks know how they can reach you.
Sue, great to be speaking with you again, too. Look forward to being on the show with you in the future. Ted, thank you, as always, for the opportunity. Apologize about the tardiness, but someone needed the attention, unfortunately, and it ran into everybody else's here. You can reach me at John Hughes Golf. It's very simple, whether it's my website, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. It's johnhughesgolf.com. I'm in the Orlando area, starting to gear up for the upcoming 1920 season. Definitely check out my blog and Facebook pages. Always updating those constantly with some thoughts for you to think about on a weekly basis. And I'm back into a regular groove of posting with some really interesting thoughts coming forward in the next few months.
Perfect. As always, guys, Sue and John, thank you very much for always bringing your best to the panel discussions. And I look forward as well to the next time that you guys will be on the Coach's Corner panel. So have a great weekend, guys, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks,
Ted. Have a good one.
All right. All right, that was my very special guest panelists here on the Coach's Corner panel, Sue Weger and John Hughes. Always look forward to having them bring their best. Before I introduce tonight's special guest, I want to just very quickly remind everybody again to go and visit golfswing.com after the show and join their subscription website. They have a great online video teaching platform for those of you who want to elevate your game. And at checkout, if you enter in promo code Golf Talk Live, you'll receive 50% off the subscription price. So here's a little bit more about golfswing.com.
Are you finally ready to improve your golf game? GolfSwing.com is changing the way golfers learn online. With the largest collection of golf training programs and drills on the planet, GolfSwing.com can help you improve every part of your game. Whether you want to gain more distance, hit it closer, or just sink more putts, GolfSwing.com's staff of world-class coaches can help you gain the results you need. Watch unlimited videos on any device from anywhere in the world and start playing better, scoring lower, having more fun, and saving money. Get your fix on demand at GolfSwing.com.
All right, and again, go to golfswing.com after the show and enter promo code Golf Talk Live checkout when you join their subscription platform, and get 50% off the subscription price. It's a great deal and a lot of great, literally thousands of great videos on there from some of the best teaching pros in the business, so you definitely want to check them out. All right, as I said at the beginning of the show, I'm very excited to have my guest on tonight. She actually joined Cindy and I a couple of weeks ago on the Women of Golf show, which airs Tuesday mornings from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern. And her name is Robbie Raugh. And she's I'm going to tell you a little bit about her and part of the reason why I brought her back. Robbie Raugh is an RN and an integrative nutritionalist and motivational health and fitness speaker. She's also a radio host of the Raw Truth, which is on ESPN and WDCX radio, as well as a Catalyst fitness instructor. She's been teaching for 35 plus years in the health and nutrition and fitness classes, and running her wellness private practice, on a daily basis. As I mentioned, she hosts her own radio show on faith, family, food, and fitness, The Raw Truth on WDCX Radio and ESPN 1520 Radio. She's also a co-host of the Carrie and Robbie Show on WDCX Radio, which streams all live worldwide. She's also seen regularly on ABC TV with her health and nutrition segments, and has been featured on ESPN TV as well. Robbie is also the featured instructor of 4 Raw Energy Fitness exercise videos and the Kinetic Workout exercise video. She is a dedicated wife and mother who loves the Lord and is passionate about helping others take care of their temporary earth suit. And her book, we didn't get a chance to talk really much about this on the Women of Golf show a few weeks ago, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to bring her back and give her some ample time. But the book is essentially the essential guide to faith, family, food, and fitness. It's called The Raw Truth Recharge, 7 Truths for Total Health and Fitness, of course, put together by Robbie. And it's a very, very interesting book. I just got a copy here recently, so I haven't had a chance to read it all, but I've already been digging in. And when she comes on here in just a moment or two, we will talk about that and just sort of catch everybody up on this show, some of her background and things like that as well. But very excited to have her come back onto this show on our Thursday evening Golf Talk Live. And got some great guests coming up in the next few weeks as well. I'm already booked all through the rest of August and a good part of September. Still got a date or two in September, and already getting plans and working towards October as well. So moving along, if you will, as we go through mid-season. For some of you in the Northeast, it's summer, if you will, is already starting to come to a close. For some of you up there, we're going to be coming into a nice fall for those of you up in the Northeast and Northwest. So you have a little bit cooler climate, a little bit of reprieve from some of the hot, steamy weather. Nothing like what we have down here in Florida, of course, but nevertheless can get pretty hot up in some of the areas in the Northeast. So a lot of great golf left to play for those of you that are doing that. And one of the interesting things I want to point out as well about my guest tonight is she's not in the golf profession. She's not a golf instructor, and really hasn't been playing golf all that long. She took it up relatively late in life, and really has taken a hold on her, if you will, and just something that she's really enjoying doing. And of course, she's been working with none other than LPGA professional Cindy Miller, and she's helping her with her game. So she's working with certainly one of the best in the industry. So as I said, she'll be joining me here in just a moment, and we're going to talk about her book, again, The Raw Truth Recharge, 7 Truths for Total Health and Fitness. We'll find out a little bit about what's in the book, and where you can get your hot little hands on as we progress through the show. But as I said, she'll be just coming on here in just a moment. Also, don't forget, at the end of the show, make sure you listen to the outro, as well as I give you some great ways, in addition to this way on the main network, blogtalkradio.com, some other ways that you can tune in, like iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher, and some other great networks as well. So maybe you've got a favorite platform that you'd like to listen to these types of shows on. It'll give you a list of some of the shows that you can find, or some of the networks, platforms, if you will, that you can find Golf Talk Live. So make sure you check that out as well. And make sure that you follow the show while you're there, so you get some updates, and when new episodes are available, you'll get them right into your email inbox, if you will, or onto your iPhone or smartphone. So make sure you check that out as well. And as I mentioned, we've got some great guests coming up, some new guests coming up that have never been on the show before in the next few weeks, and some favorites coming back as well. If you're somebody in the golf profession, maybe you're somebody in the teaching side, you might be a player, what have you, by all means, reach out to me. My email is ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. If you're somebody that's maybe interested in coming on the show, I would love to have you as a guest. So feel free to reach out to me, and we'll set that up in the next few months. Anyways, I see my guest is ready, so I've already introduced her and said all the wonderful things about her. So let me bring on my very special guest this evening, Robbie Raugh. Good evening, Robbie, and welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Well, hi, Ted. Thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you for coming back again, if you will, on this show. As I was telling the audience a few moments ago, you joined Cindy and I a few weeks ago on the Women of Golf show, which is our Tuesday morning show, and we really didn't get a chance to talk a lot about some of the things that I know you want to talk about that's in your book, and I've been plugging your book while I was waiting for you to come on board. So, but first, before we do that, let's just sort of give a very brief recap of some of the things that we talked about a few weeks ago on our morning show, and then we'll get right into the book. So as I mentioned, everybody, you're, in addition to being a nurse, you're a nutritionalist, a talk show host, speaker, author. You've been in the health and fitness industry for, nearly 40 years. So you got a lot of eggs in the pan, if you will. So how did all that sort of come about? What drove you to go into those areas?
Well, that's a good question, because back in the day, my mom said, do you want to be a teacher or a nurse? Those were about the only two choices back then. But I said, well, right. I guess I'll be a nurse, because I like health and I love learning about the body and stuff like that. So I went into nursing, and I did nursing in the hospitals and at doctor's offices for almost 20 years. But during that time, I was very frustrated. I felt like I was in sick care rather than health care.
Right.
Just, people were coming in with ailments and disease and cancers and this and that. And really, I felt like, what would it take to keep these people out of the hospital? Like, I wanted to be on the other end of nursing, called preventative nursing is what I call it. And so I started working at a gym at the same time that I was a nurse, and started teaching classes. I got certified and all that stuff. And then I started climbing my way up the ladder, of the corporate ladder at the gym, which at the time was Bally Total Fitness. But it really impacted me on how much I could really help change people's health by their dietary habits and by exercise. People with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, inflammatory disease, all kinds of things, including mental illnesses, mental troubles, because I was a psychiatric nurse as well. It was one of my specialties. And so really, so much of the diseases and conditions and mental problems that we face today are based, from our poor lifestyle decisions or dietary habits. I'm not I'm not saying that people who are depressed aren't clinically depressed. We do have that too. We have chemical imbalances and things like that. But our gut, our microbiome has so much to do with our brain now, and we're finding out more and more about that today. So it just made sense. I wanted to be in preventative nursing, and that's really how it started. And I got further and further away from the shore from nursing into, doing what I'm doing today, which is a nutritionist. I teach fitness classes, kickboxing, things like that. I've been doing that for several decades, and also running my own practice and the talk show and the TV and all that stuff.
Yeah, you've been on, and we talked about that, a few weeks ago. You've done numerous television appearances and talked about and shown a lot of what it is that, you're talking about here. And, one of the things that's I found very interesting, and, I've wanted to have somebody like you on my show because, we were talking about in the earlier segment before you came on, I as I mentioned to you before, I do a panel discussion. So I have like-minded people like myself and in the same business in the golf profession, teachers and coaches and so forth that come on, and we have a panel discussion. We talked about things like nutrition and really how it benefits. Now, one thing I want to point out that I didn't mention too much to the audience before you came out, and that was that you've recently taken up golf. This is not something, as an example for myself, I mean, I played golf at a very, very early age. My father, took me out to the driving range and so on and so forth, and, taught me how to play the game. But you're somebody that took it up a little bit later in life. So tell us a little bit about that. What bit you, if you will, or guided you to that direction to say, hey, you know what, I want to take up golf? And then tell us a little bit about what you've been doing. I know you're working with somebody right now, and you can tell us a little bit about that part of it as well.
Yeah, well, part of my story, which we can get into later, is that my family members had gotten sick as well. And so as time went on, I felt and I realized how important it is for us to stay active and stay healthy. And, I'm 63 right now, and I'm still teaching kickboxing, and I'm still teaching weightlifting, and I'm still, cycling 30 miles, 3 or 4 days a week. And so my husband and I now are empty nesters, and we're looking for things to do together. And, although I can still pound the pavement, he got into golfing just this past year. And so I thought, okay, I'll do pretty much anything that's physical,
Right.
Don't ask me to take up basket weaving or something like that. I'm not interested in that. But anything physical, right, I am interested in. So I started taking lessons just this past year with Cindy, and it kind of like made me realize why people are so addicted to it, because it's mental, it's physical, it says a lot about your mental state, how you play the game, I think. And I just fell in love with it. And so I am not one of those people that do something like halfway. It's like all the way or no way. So, of course, I want to be good at it. And it's just like another way for me to be healthy and be fit. And it is a mental game, and I like that about it too.
Yeah, what's interesting about that, and a couple things I want to mention, but what's interesting about what you said, first and foremost, is golf is a great way if you're, especially for those of you that are becoming empty nesters and are looking for something to do as a couple. The kids have moved on and they're doing their thing, and you're looking for other activities. And sometimes, your case is a little bit different. You're still in great shape and that, and you're able to do some physical things at a little bit higher level. But some folks aren't out there. And even though golf can be difficult and is not high impact like many other sports, it can certainly require certain energy. But it's a great way for couples to do something together and spend some great quality time. And yeah, it can get a little frustrating out in the golf course when you're not playing at your best. And that's why you did the right thing by going to somebody like our good friend LPGA professional Cindy Miller, who will tell you like it is, but will also, knowing the type of personality you are, that you like to be challenged, is going to put you through her, put you through your paces, if you will. So that was a smart move on your part to connect with her, and she's, in my opinion, one of the best in the industry. So she'll definitely serve you well. And I think a lot of people misunderstand golf too. They don't understand. They just think, well, I'm chasing this little white ball around, or a colored ball these days, I guess. But they don't really understand that really the physical part of the game is not as high as what a lot of people think. It's really the mental side, as you talk about. And you've got some great things in your book that, and we're going to talk about that now, because I want to sort of transition to that. You talk about the 7 truths for total health and fitness. And I want to talk a little bit how they apply, or how you're applying them in golf. And the first one really, I found very, very interesting. Obviously, we're both very spiritual people. And I'm a firm believer, as you do, that golf is not just a mental thing, but it's an emotional game as well. And how our emotions sort of play a role in how we, do different activities in life, and golf being one of them. So let's go through the 7 truths, if you will. And the first one, of course, is faith, and a belief, if you will, or believe. Talk a little bit about that, what you mean by that, and how you feel from an emotional standpoint, how that really helps you in your golf game.
Yeah, well, first of all, 7, like God placed, the number 7 when I was coming up with the chapters for this book on my heart, and I was like, 7. And then it came to me that like 7 is the foundation of God's word. It means perfection, and I mean there was 7 miracles and 7 parables, and it wasn't a coincidence that 7 was placed on my heart. And then faith being the first one, because as I said, as a psychiatric nurse for many years, I realized how important not only what we do, but what we think is to our health, and what we believe is so important. I mean, there's a saying that I don't know, what the future holds, but I know who holds the future. If we are going through life with fear or anxiety or depression and things like that, which are easy to slump into if you aren't careful about what you put in your mind. What you put in your mind is just as important as what you put in your body. And so faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. We have to, no matter what it is, whether we're trying to be a good golfer, whether more importantly we're trying to be a good spouse or a good parent, we have to believe that, number one, there's something bigger than us, if you would, that is sovereign. We aren't in control. We aren't always 100% in control, and we need to take our hands off the wheel and have faith, because things are going to happen in your life. It's not when this, if the storm comes, it's when the storm comes. There are going to be storms in your life that are going to affect not only you as a parent, you as a spouse, you as a friend, and you as a golfer. There are going to be things in your life that are going to shake your world a little bit, because our world is broken. And so we have to cling to something. And for me, it's faith. It's huge. It's the one who created the universe, and everything in it, including us, is in control. And, I mentioned that halfway, well, I didn't mention on this show, but when we were talking before, that halfway through my career, my father got cancer, and then my sister was misdiagnosed for 2 years with what doctors thought was a blocked milk duct. 2 different doctors said it was a blocked milk duct. She was misdiagnosed with what she had when they found it was stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And really, that is when my world was shaken. That's when my world was rocked. And my mom kind of instilled faith in us in growing up, and she said, pray about everything. I'm so grateful that she planted that seed, because I honestly don't know how people can make it through the day unless they do have some kind of faith. And so how it affects your golf? Well, your mindset is going to affect your golf game. And,
right.
What we put in our mind is going to affect it. And so if you can have that foundation of faith that everything is going to be okay, but you've got to trust God, it will help you not only in your golf game, but get through your life.
Well said, Robbie, and I agree 100%. What a lot of people don't understand is as I was sort of alluding to earlier, is golf is not just a physical game; it's a mental game. And if you are constantly in an emotional turmoil, that and I'll give you some examples just so that people can kind of unpack this a little bit easier. If you're at home and let's say you're married and there's strife in the home, whether it be with your spouse or with your children. And then you're going out to the golf course with your weekly foursome, and you're bringing all of that baggage. And Cindy and I laugh about this on the show a couple of times. I said it's like going to the airport and you're pulling about 4 or 5 bags, and they get heavy after a while. And you're trying to navigate through the terminal, and you're trying to get there, and you got one slung over your shoulder, and you're pulling 2 more, in each hand, and you're trying to make your flight. If you're going with that sort of emotional baggage, then you're going to have a lot of turmoil. And this is what happens with a lot of folks going to the golf course. They're thinking about their job. They're thinking about, something going on at home that's maybe not quite right, or whatever the case may be. So, you plug and insert your own storm, if you will. But the idea is that what you put into your mind, what you feed your mind, negative or positive, is what's going to come back out. So if you're putting a lot of negative baggage and a lot of negative thoughts coming into your mind throughout your day, it's going to come out conversely the other way. And if you don't have some sort of support system, in this case faith, to help navigate those waters, then what happens when you show up to the golf course is you ultimately have a situation where you're not focused on the task at hand. So you're stepping up to the first tee and you're thinking about, an argument that you had 35 minutes ago. Or you're thinking about something that you've got to do. You left at the office, you forgot to, pick to bring home, and so on and so forth. So what faith for a lot of people does is it allows them to really channel those emotions to something, as you said, that's in a higher power, and to bring a calmness and a peace within yourself. And a lot of people might be listening to this and might say, well, wait a minute, what are you saying? If I pray to God, this is going to, yeah, I am saying that. And the reason why I'm saying that is because without that faith and that belief system, a lot of people, and we see this in every walk of life today, a lot of people are very disorganized and very unhappy. And, if you think about it, now you add a task on top of that, it's very difficult to navigate those waters. So I like the way that you have sort of attacked, if you will, this project with this book, because I think it's something that really a lot of people need to take to heart. And you're exactly right. If you want it to be successful in any part of your life, whether it's on the golf course or otherwise, then you first have to have a faith and a belief system. And you've laid it out very, very well. And the other thing as well, too, which a lot of people, and it sort of goes hand in hand, is really your family and a love for one another, because a lot of these things affect your everyday life, and that coincidentally happens to be truth number 2 in your book. So talk a little bit about that.
Yes, and just to follow up on what you just said, God made our body and mind one, and we know that when you have a healthy mind, you have a better chance of having a healthy body. And that's why it's the 7 truths to health and fitness. But your spiritual life, it has to be healthy as well. And there's soul neglect. And there can be soul neglect if your family situation is toxic as well. So family being the second truth in my book, family, a support system, is so important. And let me just say this, that some people maybe don't have that family around them, or they don't have that family support system, but your friends can be like family too. The family portion of your book, having that support system is paramount to your mental health. You can be eating right and exercising all day long, but if you're living in a toxic relationship, you're going to have it's going to manifest itself into physical ailments. It lowers our immune system when we are not in a state of homeostasis, either with our relationships or with our work relationship or whatever it is. We have to, and we're commanded actually, God commands us to love one another. And he doesn't say love one another if they do what you want them to do, or if, you get what you want in the relationship. He says, love one another, period. And forgive one another. Because, again, those storms are going to come in your life, and your world's going to be rocked in ways that you never even thought would happen. And it could be within a relationship as well. And so what happens if we don't have that foundation with God and really taking care of what we put in our mind and what control with what we say, because self-control is the fruit of the Spirit. We have to have control in our relationship. So if someone upsets you on the road, do you run them off the road? Or if you're at work, do you punch a hole in the wall because you're upset with your coworker or whatever? Well, it's the same way in your relationship, and really it's the same way on the golf course. You have to control your emotions, and you're around people. And so the connectiveness with other people, including your family, is most important. And we have to love God, but love one another, no matter what they do, no matter what they say. In fact, we're commanded to forgive not 7 times, but 7 times 70 times, 7 times 7 times. So it's important that we know that we're not perfect. We all fall short. And so we have to give each other grace, whether it is within our family, at work, or on the golf course. And so that's why the family section is, and I learned love from my mom. My mom didn't tell me about love, but she demonstrated what love was. And so the relationship that I had with my mom, I know not everybody has it, but I used to say to my husband, if anything happens to my mother, you're just going to have to help me, because I'm not going to be able to handle it, because that's the most important relationship outside of my relationship with God and my relationship with my husband and my kids is in my life. And you know what? I laid the burden of my mom when she was going through the last days of her life. I laid that at God's feet and at Jesus' feet. And honestly, God gave me peace that surpasses all understanding when my sister, my father, and my mother died. And so that's what I'm talking about. Like, you're going to go through things in your life with your family and with your friends that you've got to have that foundation. And so our relationships are really important, but our relationship with God is most important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree wholeheartedly. And, just for those of you tuning into the show, I'm with my special guest, Robbie Raugh, of course, the author of the Raw Truth Recharge, 7 Truths for Total Health and Fitness. We're talking about her book, but she is also a health nutritionist and fitness practitioner, if you will, as well as a registered nurse and a radio host and TV host, and has all kinds of great accolades associated with her name. And we're talking about the 7 truths right now. And I just want to share really quickly a story, just a golf-related, just about what you were just talking about. If for those of you, obviously, that either play or follow golf, you remember back in around 2010, Tiger Woods, of course, was at the height of his game. And, he obviously had some personal things that happened, and I'm not going to get into it because everybody, I think, knows the story. But, it was really his faith that brought him back to where he is now. And he was sort of out of things for several years. I mean, he was playing at such a high level and literally at the top of his game. And, suddenly a life storm, if you will, really took him out of the game for several years. Now, even though he did try to come back and play, he's had a long struggle, a long journey. On top of that, throw in some physical injuries, some physical ailments that he's had to deal with and struggles. And I know just from many things that he has spoken over the years since that, that his faith has had a lot to do with bringing him back to where he is today. So, here's somebody who's been one of the greatest golfers of all time, right up there with Jack Nicklaus, and literally, a tragedy or a set of circumstances can take him out, not necessarily permanently, but certainly for a lengthy period of time. So obviously having that strong foundation of faith has enabled him to get back to where he is now, and it just sort of reinforces really what you were talking about. I want to move on to actually the next two, Truth 3 and then Truth 4, because they sort of work hand in hand. The first one, Truth 3, is you talk about food, eat food, not food-like things. Nutrition, we talked about this a little bit, early in our Coach's Corner segment about really what we're putting into our body and how that's going to help us out in the golf course. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, what you're talking about here, and again, why it's important that we eat better, not just for our overall health and fitness, but how it's going to help us out in the golf course by getting proper nutrition.
Absolutely. Well, I call it our temporary earth suit. Like we have a responsibility to take care of what I call our temporary earth suit. And we have to fuel and feed our body. And so when you're 20 years old, you can sometimes get away with eating cookie dough all day long and not exercising and not, and look like you exercise anyway.
Guilty. Guilty.
Same here. But as you get older, you realize the importance of fueling your body so that you, not, and I'm just going to say this, diets don't work, okay? So diets, what they do is they drastically, lower your metabolism to snail pace and, basically put your body into a state where it doesn't know the difference between you standing in your kitchen with cupboards full of food or being stuck in the wilderness without any food. So God just created this body that slows down our metabolism when we skip meals or that we try to diet. So what I'm talking about is for peak health, for peak sustainable health and wellness, we need to eat the foods of the earth that God created that you don't need to read a label on. So you don't need to read a label when you're eating vegetables. And so it's not brain surgery, but there's a little bit of a science to it because what you want to do is stabilize your blood sugar throughout the day. So if you're on the golf course for, a couple hours, 3-4 hours, you need to stabilize your blood sugar so that your blood sugar is not dropping. You're outside, it might be hot, whatever it is. You need to make sure that you are, number one, staying hydrated, drinking half of your body weight in ounces of water per day out of a glass of stainless steel bottle. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you drink 50 ounces of water per day. And if you're sweating profusely, you drink even more, or if it's a hot day. And then making sure that you have protein and fiber with every meal. So, for instance, breakfast may be eggs and sprouted grain toast. That's going to stabilize your blood sugar. Then for lunch, maybe a salad and try and eat mostly organic, of course, because you don't want to be taking in pesticides, herbicides, and all of that. Maybe a salad with some organic chicken because you don't want to be injecting hormones and all that stuff or taking in hormones and antibiotics. Or salmon, something like that. And then dinner, more vegetables, and then protein again. And I'm a vegetarian. I do eat fish, but you don't have to eat meat. If you choose to eat meat, you shouldn't eat too much meat And remember that meat takes a long time to digest, and here is where a lot of people end up with colon cancers and things like that, because the meat, if you've read the China study or watched Forks Over Knives, you'll know that it's the protein in the animal products that's actually linked to cancer. So you want to limit animal products, but have protein and fiber with every meal and keep your blood sugar stabilized throughout the day. If it's white, don't bite.
Right. Well, and you raise a very interesting point, Robbie, and that is, how we fuel our body obviously is going to prolong our lives and give us a much healthier life along the way. But again, as we talked about earlier in the program, there's energy zappers as well. When you go out in the golf course, people get out there, and I don't want to, again, I want to emphasize to the listeners out there, I don't want to say that, you can't enjoy yourself and things like that. But at the same time, if you want to go out and you play your best golf, and you're, let's say, going to be out there for 4 to 5 hours, and you're playing a round of 18 holes, and by the time you hit the turn at number 10 and 11, 12, suddenly you have no energy left, and you still got 5 or 6 holes left to play. More often than not, it's not necessarily climate related, because it's hot out. A lot of it's because you haven't fueled your body, not only before you started the round, but throughout the round. And that's important as well, correct?
Absolutely, and it's the same with your mental state too. So your blood sugar affects your mental state. So you can't concentrate if your blood sugar drops. So if you're having donuts for breakfast and then you go out on the golf course, you're not going to be able to concentrate. Physically, your blood sugar is going to drop, so you might feel shaky. You might not be able to concentrate, but you might also feel like you're weak. So we live in a processed food society right now where we eat out of a box or a window, and we think we can have $1 million health and $1 million body, and it just doesn't work that way. As you get older, you realize, first of all, that muscle dictates metabolism. Muscle shapes your body, but muscle also, increases your metabolism. So if you're looking for endurance, then you need to eat foods that are going to help your muscles, like protein, and you really should do. We can talk about fitness after we finish the food segment, but what you eat directly affects your mental, state and also your physical state as well. And so I say, bio-individuality matters. As a nutritionist, I don't try to make everybody a vegetarian because some people perform better and feel better with animal products, and that's fine. Just make sure that you're eating vegetables. Well, people say, I don't like vegetables. Well, there's so many different ways that you can prepare them, but really for peak health and wellness, and for sustainability, you need to eat vegetables. There's no way around it. And carbohydrates, go ahead.
Right. No, go ahead. What I was just going to add very quickly is, I always was a big fan of, and I'm not going to lie and say I don't, eat meat, but, I used to, being Italian, of course, a lot of great Italian dishes, and I used to love, chicken Parmigiano. And I've recently, in recent years, been introduced to eggplant Parmesan. So, there's a lot of things that you can substitute, which is fantastic, but that's another segment. But I want to move on, if you don't mind. I want to move on just because of time to truth number 4, and this is again sort of piggybacking onto the nutritional side, and that's the fitness side. And again, people think that you got to go out and do this heavy regimented workout and things like that. And that's not really the case. There's a lot of different ways that you can exercise. And that too is also going to benefit how well you play out in the golf course. So talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Our leg strength is directly related to our mortality. So when people don't move, when you look at the elderly, they move less and less and less. And what happens is it affects their mortality. So when we don't move our bodies, we increase our chances of heart disease and many other diseases as well. When we move our bodies, we decrease our chances, including of getting cancer. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I work out like a maniac. I know I have a 50% chance of getting breast cancer because my sister had it. So you don't have to do kickboxing like I'm doing, but walking on the course is strenuous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're not in shape, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it in your muscles. You're going to not have the energy, both in your mind again and physically. So you want to be in shape. So, I mean, go for a walk. You need to exercise most days of the week. That's not 3 days a week. That's most days of the week, 5 to 7 days per week. For adults, really, you should exercise 60 minutes. Even, teenagers should exercise 60 minutes. If you can only do 30 minutes, then do 30 minutes, but do something. And it can be accumulative. So, in other words, if you only have 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the afternoon and 10 minutes in the evening, that 30 minutes right there, you get accumulative benefits. If you only have 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening, you still get health benefits. So there's no excuse because all of us spend at least 10 minutes looking at our phone every day,
Right.
We,
at least.
Yeah, at least, right? So you can find the time. And what I say is you're gonna spend the time and the money either way, because people, for the past 40 years that I've been working in health and fitness industry, people say two excuses they give me. They don't have the time to work out, or they don't have the money to eat right and work out. And I say you're going to spend the time and the money either way. You're either going to spend the time and the money on sick care, or you're going to spend the time and the money on health care. Which is better for you? Because we all know how long it takes to have diagnostic tests or sit in the doctor's office or go for blood work and go for this test, go for that treatment, do that. That's sick care. I'd rather spend it, exercising and eating right.
Yeah, and what's interesting too, Robbie, really quick, and then we'll move on. I think about my parents' generation. At that time, obviously, fitness was not as integral part of their lives, and the sort of mindset too was, I'm going to work in my career for X number of years and retire, and kind of stretch out and lay back and take it easy. And especially, I'll be honest, for men, we were the biggest culprits, or they were the biggest culprits. They would get in their lazy boy chair and, sit in front of the TV, and they weren't as physically active in many cases. And I think this is why, we saw, a lot of our fathers, if you will, not do so well later on in life because they were not as physically active as they were when they were younger. They just sort of plunked themselves down. And, again, if you want to play your best golf, you've got to be active and you've got to take care of your body, both internally and externally, and between the ears particularly. And one of the other things too that I want to talk about very quickly is truth number 5, and that's really detoxing for health. That's equally important, not just what you're putting in your body as far as feeding, but periodically you've got to detox your body. Talk a little bit about that, Robbie.
Yes, it's detox body and mind. Sometimes we get, again, what we put in our mind is so important. What we put, what we look at, what we listen to, all of that. Sometimes we're not, listening to what we should be listening to or looking at what we should be looking at. So we need to go back again and get almost like a spiritual cleanse, but also a physical cleanse as well. So right now, there's so much information, as I mentioned earlier, about the microbiome. So your gut microbiome are the bacteria that's in your gut. It's called the microbiome, and there's good and bad. And so if you eat junk food for 7 days, studies have shown you get rid of 50% of your good bacteria. What happens is you drastically lower your immunity so that you open the door to disease. Not only that, they found that your microbiome is linked to your set point weight. So you could be obese just because you don't have a good, healthy, good bacteria in your gut. also, the studies show, as I mentioned earlier, that it's also linked to anxiety, depression, inability to handle stress, things like that. So your microbiome really is like the second brain. So what we do in my practice, if someone comes in and they're having health problems, or they're having, problems dealing with life, or they're gaining weight and they're eating everything right and they're exercising, what I recommend is that they do a detox. Now, a detox can mean a lot of things. I'm not talking about something that you have to stay home from work for, or you're going to be in the bathroom the whole time or anything like that.
Right.
A detox, and I have a detox in my book, is really eating the foods of the earth that God created that you don't need to read a label on, without any pesticides, herbicides, hormones, GMOs, no antibiotics, none of that that's wreaking havoc on our health. It's clean eating. It's eating foods that you don't need to read a label on. It's not drinking juice for a week, or just fasting, or having food shipped to your door, or counting calories or counting points. It's none of that. It's just eating clean, whole foods that are nutrient dense. And so I list them all in my book, but I'm telling you, not only can you lose a lot of weight that way, but you feel so much better physically, and you have more energy. By day 3 or 4, after giving up sugar, caffeine, and junk food, in the first 3 days, it's hard because you're having withdrawal symptoms from sugar and even caffeine. And caffeine's not bad. I'm not saying it is, but we do get rid of it at first during the detox, just to cleanse our body. And you can add it back in, but sugar's addicting, caffeine's addicting, and if you need something to wake up in the morning, that's a problem. So we get rid of all of the stuff, and by day 4, you have so much energy. You don't even want to go back to caffeine. You don't need sugar. You're off sugar. You're not craving it. So that's why we do a detox, and it's really important to do one spiritually as well as physically.
Right. And, we talked about earlier in the show, again, this is another area, not specifically detox, but, we talked about, and again, I'm going to relate it back to golf for the audience that's listening here tonight, why these things are important. We get out on the golf course, and again, we see a lot of folks out there as instructors, and Cindy would certainly attest to this. We see players out there, and again, they're going along, and they get to a certain point, and suddenly they have no energy left, and their brain, developing a little brain fog, and they're not able to concentrate and focus. And a lot of people say, well, what can I do to improve my game? Well, some of the things that you're talking about here in your book, by applying them to your everyday life. And again, I understand people that, we're time restricted and things like that, and they don't want to, they're afraid to make a big drastic change. But you can ease into some of this stuff a little bit too, I think, under the right circumstances. But, we're not asking you to sort of drop tomorrow and just, make a drastic change. But people want to play better golf, and they want to enjoy, their round and have fun. Well, some of what you're talking about here can help you achieve that, because it's going to give you more energy if you're eating properly, and doing your prayers and things like that is going to help calm and relax your mind, and reduce the stress in your life. And what you're going to find is you're actually going to enjoy golf much more. I want to go to number 6 right now, as we get ready to sort of wind things up a little bit here in a few moments. And that is managing stress, which again goes back to really the first part, first truth, if you will, is again that faith and that belief system is allowing you to help manage your stress along the way. And that's something that a lot of golfers get out there. They get anxiety because of their round, and they're bringing, as I said earlier, they're lugging wheels up with all their baggage into the golf course from home or work or what have you. Let's talk about number 6 a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's it's so important. We have to manage our stress. Listen, we all have stress. We just have to manage it. And for me, the way that I manage my stress is through prayer. I mean, it's like cliche to say let go, let God, but it's true. You cannot carry it with you. There's only so much that we can control, and then that's where that belief system comes in. But we're commanded to not be anxious for anything. I mean, God tells us, do not be anxious for anything. Do not worry. And there are really 4 risk factors to disease, and they are stress, lack of sleep, obesity, and eating suboptimal foods, processed foods, stuff like that. So, your stress does affect your weight, which also affects your golf game, which also affects your performance in other areas of your life. So when we are stressed, we're more likely to be overweight. It also, puts us in a fight or flight mode where, we almost perceive things as a threat or danger. And this reaction causes certain hormones like adrenaline and cortisol to be released, which speeds up our heart rate, slows down digestion, shunts blood flow to major muscle groups, which, again, if you're on the golf course, this is going to affect your game and, affects our energy and our strength and our focus and all of that. So, stress is just not good for our health. It's not good for anything in our life, but we all have it. We just have to learn how to manage it. And, of course, golf is a good way to help manage your stress. I mean, there's nothing better than, diverting your focus from what's stressing you out, right? But it can work the opposite way. You can carry it to the golf course. So, using prayer, using exercise, those are good ways to manage your stress. Talking to a friend, shutting down electronically, giving yourself some slack, cutting yourself some slack. Everything doesn't have to be perfect in your life. You just have to realize that there is a plan for our life, and God's plan is to prosper us and not harm us, to give us hope in the future. It's not to cause things to go wrong in our life. So you have to trust in that. That's where that faith comes in again.
Mm-hmm. Well said. And I just want to point something out too, just very quickly, and I'm going to mention a little bit more as we wrap up. But golf for me has always been a great way to help me focus on other areas. And it's not even just playing golf, even just doing the shows that I do and things like that. I enjoy it. I enjoy talking about it. I enjoy the challenges and helping students that I've worked with over the years. And, listening to what you're saying here tonight makes so much sense because, we have to treat our bodies a lot better than what we have in recent years because, again, as we start to discover new things and reasons why things are happening the way they do. Years ago we used to look at nutrition and things like that much differently than we do today. And same with fitness and detoxing and things like that, and stress levels as well. We look at all of these things, and now we're understanding how these things are actually affecting us long term. Because we know when you're in your teens or your early 20s, even, you don't really think that far ahead. And you're not, that's, when I'm 85, I'll worry about that. Well, then suddenly, 50, 60 rolls around the corner real quick, and you're dealing with a lot of these things. And, so I just want people to really, I hope, listen to this tonight and understand that this is not just going to help your golf game. This is obviously everyday life. But I want you to really think about some of the things that we're talking about here. And the last one, Robbie, is one of my favorites, and that's sleep. I've learned, when I was younger, obviously, you're up till wee hours of the morning and, you only need a couple of hours sleep and you're back at it again the next day. But I learned very quickly getting a good night's rest and just being still and patient is very, very crucial to good health as well. So let's, as we get ready to wrap up here, let's talk about truth number 7.
Yeah, well, again, when I was writing this book, and I go into everything in depth in each of these chapters, but I meet people in my practice, again, who are eating right and exercising. They're doing everything right, but they're still sick. They're still tired. They're still not feeling well, and they still have disease. And why is that? Because again, as I said before, they're not spiritually taking care of themselves. They don't have that support system with the family. They're not, maybe living in a toxic relationship. And now we get to stress and sleep. And those things, it doesn't matter how well you eat and how much you exercise. If you're not managing your stress, and then if you're not getting enough rest, you are not going to be able to function. You won't be able to concentrate on the golf course. You won't be able to concentrate in life. And really, it leads to you physically breaking down. I mean, chronic stress causes a lot of problems with your health, chronic prolonged stress. And sleep deprivation it leads to chronic stress of your body. It stresses your body when you're not sleeping. Not only that, there was a study done that showed that people who get an average of only 6 hours of sleep per night are 27% more likely to be overweight than those who slept 7 to 9 hours. And also, people who slept an average of 5 hours of sleep per night were 73% more likely to be overweight. Because what happens is, again, it releases hormones in our bodies because of the stress it's putting on our body. We hang on to fat. Our body actually hangs on to fat when we're not getting enough sleep or we're not managing our stress. That will affect you physically. It will affect you mentally. And so, there are so many things that we can do to manage our stress, to manage our sleep. In terms of the sleep, lavender oil helps both. It helps manage your stress. It also helps manage your sleep. Things like shutting down electronically at least 2 hours before you go to bed, making sure that you're not keeping your phone by your bedside, making sure that you go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, because that consistency is going to help to get your body on a schedule, on a pattern. And the list goes on and on and on. But, really taking a warm bath, a hot tub bath or a sauna, taking supplements occasionally like melatonin or St. John's wort, certainly praying, because sometimes we can't sleep because we're worried. And again, writing things down for tomorrow so that you're not thinking about them. Exercise helps you sleep. And, of course, talking to a friend, things like that, if you're concerned about something and it's causing you to stay up at night. But there's a lot of things that you can do. Shutting out lights, not having night lights, and getting those blackout curtains and things like that really help as well.
Yeah, rest is a huge really component into health. And I know in more recent years, I've started forcing myself, really, because you get distracted throughout the day. You get so many things on your mind, and really shutting it down. And even with social media and things like that, I obviously use social media for promotions of the shows and things like that. But I don't spend a lot of time, as most people that follow me know, I don't spend a lot of time posting, a lot of trivial things like that. I do it specifically for business purposes and that, and I try to limit, during the week, really what I post, just because I don't want to be constantly entrenched in social media, because what ends up happening is you just get, you're looking at, well, how many likes am I going to get, or how many, follow me this week, or whatever. And the problem is that your mind doesn't shut down come the end of the day. So I've made a conscious effort to ratchet that back considerably. Not that I was really, overboard with it, but, I've tried to really ratchet that back a lot over the years. And I've made a conscious effort of getting a good night. I mean, every day I get 8 hours sleep. Just because,
awesome.
I want to, and I've still managed to put a full day in, but, I make a conscious point of doing that, because I want to feel better. And, as I'm in my mid 50s, that gives the folks an idea of where I'm at. So I want to make sure that my later, half of my life, that I'm going to be healthy and be able to enjoy it. And I don't want to be sick, and I want to be able to play golf until I obviously can't play anymore, and teach and do all these other things. And you can't do that if you're not fueling your body correctly, and if you're not getting the proper rest.
Right.
So a great book. And I also just want to point out for the listeners another great reason to buy this book, obviously because there's a lot of great information, but you have put together many pages, of course, with help of family and friends, some great recipes that are in this book, beginning on page 181. I mean, there's literally a thick portion of this book has some great recipes, for what you were talking about earlier. So there's no excuse, for those listening out there that want to go out and make some changes. Robbie's got you covered there as well. So Robbie, as we just have a few minutes left here, and I want to give you an opportunity, since we've unpacked the book in obviously not its full entirety, but given the folks a good listen to what's available. Where can they get a copy of the Raw Truth Recharge, 7 Truths for Total Health and Fitness? Where can they get that? Where is it available? Where can we direct them?
Yes, Amazon.com is probably the easiest place to get it. But if you want it at your local bookstore, they can order it as well. But it's a good gift for anyone because it really hits every arena of our life. And most people tell me they cry reading the book. I don't want people to cry, but it is impactful. I've been told.
It certainly is. As I mentioned to you the other day, obviously Robbie very graciously sent me a copy of her book prior to the show, and I've had a chance to start to dig into it. I haven't tried any of the recipes yet, but I'm definitely going to do that. So I haven't had a chance to read the whole book, but I guarantee you that I will many times over. But Robbie, I want to thank you not only for putting this book together, because I think it's a really well done book, certainly from what I've seen and read so far and from what we've discussed tonight. But I want to thank you for coming on Golf Talk Live and sharing that with my audience, because again, as I was alluding to, folks, I know for the last hour we didn't talk a lot about golf and specifics, and you're probably sitting there thinking to yourselves out there, well, how's this going to help my golf game? I guarantee you, if you read this book and you follow literally to the letter of what Robbie's talking about through this book, from your spiritual life right out to some good health and fitness tips in here, I guarantee it, you're going to see an improvement in your golf game. And obviously you're going to work together with your local LPGA or PGA golf professional is going to help you with the physical part of your game. But what Robbie talks about in this book is definitely going to help change your life in such a way that it can't do anything but help your golf game as well. So go out and get a copy. Go to Amazon.com and just search out the Raw Truth Recharge. I guarantee that's all you need, or Robbie Raugh, and Raugh is spelled R-A-U-G-H, and you'll find her book that way. Get yourself a copy. It's well worth it. Robbie, thank you very much, and God bless you for all that you do. And I know that we're going to try and work on some things in the future that you and I talked about privately, and we'll talk more in the near future about that. But thank you very, very much for not only joining Cindy and I a few weeks ago, but for coming back and joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live.
Well, thank you. And I just want to mention the book was also just picked up by Bridge Logos, which is a publisher, a national publisher. So people can get it that way too, and I didn't want to forget that. But Ted, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to see what the future holds, and I'm just grateful that I got into golf.
You know what, go out and go forth and really enjoy it. And like I said earlier, Cindy is a great professional. Both her and her husband, Alan, have done so much to give back to the game. They've obviously gotten a lot from the game over the years as well, but they do so much to give back. And I think that you'll really enjoy working with her, because she'll give it to you straight, which I know you like, but she will definitely help in that journey. And she'll work you hard, but it'll be well worth it in the long run. You'll get many great years, you and your husband, of some fun together on the golf course. So Robbie, again, God bless you. Thank you for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live. Much continued success, and I'll be in touch with you soon, okay?
Well, thank you for an excellent interview. And, yes, we'll talk soon. God bless you. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That was my very special guest, Robbie Raugh. She's a registered nurse, author, and motivational speaker. And you can find her literally all over the internet. And her book, again, is called The Raw Truth Recharge, 7 Truths for Total Health and Fitness. Go to Amazon.com is probably the easiest way to get it, and check it out. On that note, thank you for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live. And once again, thanks to the Coaches Corner panel, John Hughes and Sue Weger. Thanks, guys, for doing a fantastic job. And I will see you next week right here on Golf Talk Live. Thanks for listening to this evening's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. Remember to tune in each week at blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live. If you can't join us live, check out the on-demand section for previously aired broadcasts, or listen on any of the following social media platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, CastBox, TalkStream Live, and of course, Spotify. To get updates on future shows and upcoming guests, be sure to visit the show's Facebook page, Golf Talk Live Blog. You can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. Remember to join me live each week for another great broadcast of Golf Talk Live. See you next time. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.